Hello, creators. Welcome to another episode on the Creator Pod. And today's episode is a pretty laid back episode. We're going to be talking about dropping out of school to be a creative. And I'm going to be sharing my experience doing so in a couple of different parts. First, we're going to be talking about what led to the decision. Next, we're going to talk about how I made the decision. We're going to talk about the post decision backlash I got. We're going to talk about the suffering that came from that decision. We're going to talk about the turning points, and we're going to close it up with lessons and advice for anyone who may be contemplating such a decision. Now, if this is something that you're interested in, stick around for the intro and we'll dive right in. You're listening to the Creator Pod, a podcast that inspires and empowers creatives worldwide to be the best versions of themselves and create freely. I'm Philip Obosi, and I'm a creative who believes in the power of shared stories and experiences. So I'm sitting with the best creators to tell their stories and find valuable lessons for us all. Now, because this is a pretty long episode, I have taken some time to write out a couple of points around this story that I would really want to share. So I have the notes here on my phone. So I'll be making reference to that. So I hope that doesn't get distracting. However, if there's something I forget to mention and there's something you're curious about or want to know, feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below and I would answer every question. I have nothing to hide. All right, let's get to it. Yeah, I'm going to drop this here. So the first part of this story is going to come from how I reached the decision. What were the factors that led to me wanting to drop out of school, which was honestly very surprising for a lot of people. And I think it would still be surprising for a lot of people who know me. But yeah. So the first thing that I think led to that was way back secondary school. I have never been the kind of person that could exclusively say I want to go for one thing without the other, especially when I am talented both ways. Now, let me explain. You get to that typical point, right, where as a student, you have to go either to the art class or the science class, right? But all the while, prior to that point, I had interest both ways. I had followed this interest with like a lot of energy. I was very, very, very serious about arts subjects. I'm a science student. So it got to the time to choose, and I did not want to choose. I refused to make a choice. Eventually, I was forced to make a choice, and then I chose to go to the art class. After I did that, my parents were not satisfied with the decision. They said I had to be a science student, of course, for the typical reasons, because everybody believes that smart students go to the science class, and then those that can't make it to the science class go to the art class. So my parents came to school to see the principal. They called me into the principal's office, and the principal started explaining to them that I was pretty much the best student both ways, or at least one of the best, and they should let me choose whatever I would do well both ways. But they were insistent. They refused, and eventually I ended up in the science class. Now, that was the first major factor that led to it, because from that decision onward, a lot of choices were made by my parents and were largely not really what I wanted to do. Now, a part of me was still pretty interested in being both a science student and an art student. So I was attending both classes, right? I would be in the science class 1 minute and the next I'm in the art class. My favorite teacher taught mostly art students. One of my closest friends as well was also an art student. So there was a lot of sneaking out from the science class to go to the art class to do art courses and meet with people. Now, when it got to the time to write WAEC and NECO, which is like, the exam I think it's called A-levels. Yeah. So when it got to that point, I made a conscious choice to go for mostly science-oriented things in my WAEC, and I went for art-oriented things in my NECO. So I went geography. I went for that maths for one, and the other way I went commerce, economics, and those kind of things. I think I did geography as well. But basically I tried my best to cover both grounds on that level. So that was the case for secondary school stuff, and then it got to the time for university. I had to make a choice. What was I going to study in university? Now, my dad was a computer scientist. My elder brother was also studying computer science. And somehow everybody decided that what was best for Philip was computer stuff. Again, this was a relatively informed decision from them because they felt like, I was already good with a lot of computer things. I used to fix a lot of things around the house. And it probably is in line. But it wasn't for me. It was just I was a curious person. I would always try to understand stuff, whether I was computers or whether I was art oriented. It was just knowledge to me. So it was what was available and it was what I went after. Now, they made the choice that I would study computer engineering, largely not without my involvement. Um, they felt like they had factored in my skills and it was the best thing at the time, which I appreciate in retrospect. I think perhaps they were right from their own standpoints, right? Um, but yeah, that was it. They put University of Benin as my first choice. I've forgotten the other university. That was the second choice. But yeah, I got into Uniben, computer engineering, like they had written. So yeah, I got into the university, and I think 100 level was pretty much like it is for every other person. You come like a secondary school student, and you're so excited, and you want to prove yourself. You understand that amongst this group of people, this new group, and you are trying to establish some level of intellectual dominance already. So everybody's like scholar, jacking, reading, trying to pass exams more or less, and all of that. And I did that. I performed very well, and yeah, everybody was kind of pleased. People felt like I could do better, obviously, which I agree with. But yeah, I did good. Um, Now that was 100 level, right? But then 200 level came, and then I picked up interest in programming. By the way, I had already been aware of programming before then. My elder brother came back with some programming books. I think he left a C++ book at home or something. And I had already started reading that without much context, obviously. I didn't know what it was about, really. But I was just trying stuff. So I had played around with it a bit, yeah. And so I picked it up again. I started programming in C Sharp, and then it was primarily creating desktop applications and yeah, things like that, trying to learn Windows interface and all of that, build Windows apps. And yeah, at some point I migrated to learning other technologies, like ASP.NET, around the same ecosystem, obviously. Um, but then that was where the problem started because there was now this new thing that I could see that had more promise for me. By the way, I had always felt that university, at least my being in the University of Benin, was a pretty much downgraded slash useless experience. Because even before I got into school, I had been very excited by what was education like outside of Nigeria. So I would go online and I would check the syllabus of schools like MIT and all of those people to try to figure out what people like me in the US probably know or are studying. So getting into school and realizing that what I was doing wasn't what they knew and it was way below, to be fair. So, and then comparing the syllabus, I realized that what I was doing in what I was meant to do in like 400 level, 500 level was what they would have done in their 200 level or 300 level. And that was very disappointing. It felt like a waste of energy to go through the system to study all these things that were pretty outdated. The lecturers were using notes that they used 30 to 40 years ago. That was the breaking point for me, realizing that he was even recommending textbooks that were out of date and we couldn't find anywhere online. So I first of all tried to solve that by doubling as a student of MIT. So MIT had this open platform where they put out their curriculum and all of that. So I would study school stuff, and then I would also make sure I'm studying what my counterparts at MIT or at the same level would be knowing, so that I could like balance that knowledge. But yeah, I was doing that for a bit until yeah, I started programming, and I realized that I started programming, and then like there was like a bandwidth problem. I couldn't do all these things, and so I made the choice. I made the choice to do my programming and MIT stuff, and gradually school started dying. Also, this became worse because I am naturally an introvert, and I do not like to interact much, except within like a very close circle. So the typical setup of Nigerian universities is that students have to suck up to lecturers in many ways. A lecturer could fail you for not greeting them in the morning. A lecturer could fail you for not helping them carry their bags. There was like lots of bullshit like that. A lecturer could fail you because they felt like you were raising your shoulder, like it was terrible. So, but I began to fall into those kind of problems because first of all, I did not interact. So I was like this loner guy in the department who wasn't necessarily friendly, who didn't know any lecturer, and even some lecturers reached out to try to know me, but I always escaped. So I think they felt that was also disrespectful. Um, and and yeah, pretty much that led to a phase of witch hunting. There were lecturers who now started intentionally failing me for no reason. And pretty much in retrospect, I probably think they did that so that, yeah, I would have to come to their office or something like that. I don't know. Some people, I don't get the motive behind a lot of things that those people did. And honestly, I don't care. But yeah, I'm telling you the story, so I have to say that. And I remember my course advisor coming to the class one day, and he was basically saying a lot of things. I mean, there was the whole anticipation, where's our result, when is the result coming out. So people were excited to see him. People were waiting for some feedback or something from him. And yeah, he came to the class. I was talking about the result, and I was just quiet as usual, sitting at the back, not saying anything. I think I was probably on my laptop, maybe not, I'm not sure anymore. But I was quiet and I was listening. And he was trying to be funny. He wasn't funny, to be honest, in my opinion. And he was saying a lot of things, and people were laughing. Maybe they felt like they had to laugh, right? But it wasn't funny to me, and I didn't laugh. And he looked at me and he was like, and then a new like conversation started around how some of us think that we could come to the school and get through school without getting to know or interact with our lecturers. And I vividly remember him say that the scores or your grades that come out on the results board are not a function of your effort. He said, do you think, the question was, do you think the scores you see on the board are because that's what you wrote in the exam? And that was rather interesting because, yeah, that's what I think. Like, that is what it should be. I wrote your test, I wrote your exam, score me whatever I scored. Like, if I failed, awesome. If I did not, then I expect to get the grade for what I did. But then he kept on. He kept on talking, and he was like, yeah, you need to form a relationship with your lecturers. You need to come close to your lecturers so that they take you in, blah, blah, blah. Don't be forming Luna and all of this kind of things. You basically, more or less, he was saying you can't survive in this school without sucking up to lecturers. And maybe it's pride or my ego or something similar, but nope, I'm not interested in doing that. I do not think that you have to. I believe in being so good that you can't be ignored. So I don't think that at any point in my life I want to suck up to somebody to get privileges. If I'm not good enough for it, then I'm not good enough for it. And I'll focus on the things I'm good enough for, or I would try to get better so that I deserve whatever I am looking for. So yeah, that was 200 level. That happened, and then I knew that this had become a problem. So I became very disinterested in a lot of things. I went to his office and we had that conversation, and he hammered on it again, kept telling me the same thing. That I need to get close to lecturers, stop forming that Milona. But yeah, that happened. 300 level, it became worse. I stopped attending classes because they were pretty much useless. And for the most part, I would read by myself when it was time to do a test or an exam, and I would just come and dump whatever knowledge I have acquired and get out. And now at that point, it had become a bigger problem because the lecturers had. I don't even know how this. I don't know how these things work with lecturers, to be honest, because I don't know, do they like hold a meeting to talk about this person, or is it just whispers here and there? But I eventually realized that there was like a number of lecturers had caught up with the fact that I did not attend classes, and they were not happy about it. So they felt like I was showing myself, or like, who do you think you are? You would not attend classes, and yes, somebody will help you write your name on the attendance sheet, and then randomly you just come and write what you think you know in the exams and expect a first score. Yeah, I do. I know, and again, I get it that that's not how the educational system works, but yeah, I did that at the time. So, um, 300 level came, and yeah, my results were getting worse. This time, this was the all-time low. I had 2 absent cases and 2 Fs, which I became, and that was that was the breaking point. I realized that, oh, this is witch hunting. One of the absent cases was in a course that you had to show up every week, every Friday, and you had to write your name on the attendance sheet. And I did that. I showed up every Friday and I wrote my name on the attendance sheet. So clearly, if I'm marked absent for this course, it was intentional. It wasn't like a mistake. There was no mix up. This guy was after me and he wanted me to suck up to him. But I didn't. I refused. So I had those, now the interesting thing about the Fs was the Fs came from a lecturer who had told me that he would fail me. At the time, I can't even remember the story. I should pause. That's how I haven't. I think there was something. There was something. I probably, yeah. I think, yeah. What's the story? So yeah, basically, I think I failed to greet him. I think I saw him coming and I passed or something, and eventually came to see him in his office for something totally unrelated, and he brought it back that I didn't greet him and all that, and he was like that. I think that I would just waltz into the exam hall and write whatever I like, and I'll score right. That I should not worry. At that point, I knew it was pretty much. At that point, I don't think the reality of it had hit me because I didn't think that anybody would just outrightly fail you because you didn't greet them or because they felt like you were disrespectful or something of that sort. So I was just relaxed about it. I wasn't really scared. I was just like, yeah. I apologized, I think. No, I don't think I apologized, to be honest. But I greeted him afterwards, and I left. Because, again, this is probably pride, which I think it was. But I don't see the point in apologizing for something I didn't do. Like, I didn't greet you because I was not focused on you. Not because I didn't want to greet you. I was like running or rushing to someone's office and I needed to do something. So the fact that you think that you're so important that I should have greeted you despite anything that was on my mind is ridiculous to me. So, but yeah, that happened and then I got failed. At that point, I was honestly no longer interested. Even prior to then, I was already very nonchalant about a lot of things. I think I missed an exam myself because it was on the same day with a program I wanted to attend. So I was like, fuck that shit. And yeah, I attended the program. So the next level came and everybody was excited to go on. This is 400 level now, but I wasn't even interested anymore. So I didn't check my results anymore. I didn't go to class. I didn't write exams. I wasn't interested in anything. And that was it. That was like a number of things that led up to my disinterest in school. Now, a lot of times when I think about this story, I tend not to be too conscious of the financial component to my decision because I think that if I was actually interested in school, I would have managed my way through it. I was a hustler. So one way or the other, I would have been fine, but I wasn't. So a little discomfort here and there. And I'm just like, yeah, it's not worth it. Right. So that's it. Now, the second part is how I made the decision. To be honest, in retrospect, I don't think I made the decision in the best of ways, right? But there's a number of things that I did that I think were helpful. First of all, I had a safety net, right? So one of the things I did was to make sure that I applied to. So instead of just drop out of school, I told myself I'm going to drop out and test what, like my hypothesis. Because obviously my hypothesis was that I was honestly very sure that you could survive in this world and be excellent at whatever you do without school. Now, you could, and now I give myself a 1 year period to try that. And I did that by deferring my admission. So I think we were supposed to register the courses for the next semester or something. 400 level was supposed to start. I decided I was going to take a break. So I went through the whole process, applied to that they should defer my admission because I was dealing with health and financial issues, which were true actually. But the truth is that I would have survived if I was serious about it, but I wasn't. And that was it. So I gave myself 1 year. And the idea was that in this 1 year, I'm going to try to do as much as I can. And I'm going to just go all at it and see what I could make happen. And then I'm going to compare the results of that 1 year against school. And if I feel like I prefer what happened in 1 year, then I am not going back. Now, the part of this decision that I don't think was the best was that I did not tell anyone about it. I didn't tell my parents about it. I didn't tell my siblings about it. While I don't think I owe them that, I think that by my principle of being honest about stuff, I should have just said it. Because what's the worst you could do? You could, to be honest, I don't think anyone would have stopped me. I'm that stubborn about things that I am very sure I want to do, especially when it comes to my life. Like, I believe in the fact that I believe in being sure about the wrong thing than doing the right thing half sure. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's what I did. So in retrospect, I probably would have told them from the get-go and being very, like, it would have been a case of informing them versus seeking permission, but I didn't inform them until much after. Um, in fact, I didn't inform them by myself. Like my parents, my mom found out, and then I had to come clean. My mom was aware of like the lecturers failing me and all of that, and she felt like the kind of person I was, things were only going to go worse because she knew I wouldn't apologize, I wouldn't beg, and all of that. I would just keep going and believe that my actions or my efforts should be what I get back, right? So she came to school without telling me. I wasn't even in Benin. I think I was in Lagos for some job or something. I don't know. But yeah, I was in Lagos, I think for a program. So my mom went to Benin and saw the lecturers and found out the truth. They were like, oh, your son deferred. He has not even been attending classes, blah, blah, blah. And now this was one of the parts that made me super sure I wasn't going back. Because initially, a lot of things I thought around this were just hypotheses. But then my mom now had a conversation with a lecturer, same church kind of thing going on. And so he was willing to help her. And yeah, suddenly, automatically, every course which I had problems with, which I had been trying to rectify without any real progress, all of them, the lecturer stepped in and things started moving, right? So I realized that pretty quickly that I wasn't making progress because they weren't going to let me make progress. So when it was the lecturer who was helping out and who was talking to this person and that one, things became clearer. So I decided that I'm not going to be in a system where I have to be friends of a person who would walk within the network to help me. I want to earn my place in life. So that made me even sure that I wasn't going to come back. And I told my mom. They invited me to the office, like, where are you? All of that. I came back. I came to the office. And yeah, I was sat there and they were telling me a lot of things. Yeah, you think I'm talented, I'm intelligent, but the devil is trying to ruin my life. I should finish school, even if it's for the sake of finishing it. And I get it, but at the time, the only thing I could think about is if you were doing something, if you were making a mistake, right? And someone catches you halfway, like, dude, you're making a mistake. What would be your reaction? Would you say, oh, I've already started, let me just finish this mistake and then I can rectify thereafter? Or would you just stop? And so I truly felt that way about it at the time. I felt like this was a mistake. I've made it a bit because I listened to you and let you force me down this path. But I am getting more self-aware and I am honestly very sure I don't want to go down this path. So I'm not doing this. Now, the next part of this we're going to look at is how I got to making the decision. How did I make that decision, right? So we've talked about that. Also, I had a friend. So also at the time, like, I had a friend who was pretty much in a similar space as I was, and he was also contemplating leaving school for similar reasons. School wasn't like the thing that was promised, and we had like a seemingly more successful path to follow, or we had a seemingly more feasible and rewarding path to follow. So we were contemplating this decision together. But the interesting part about that guy was somehow I ended up convincing him to stay in school and I dropped out. And the cool part about that decision, which he made for himself, was today we're in pretty good places. And while I can't say that if he did not make that decision, he won't be in a good place, he doesn't regret making that decision. And he's glad that, yeah, at least he just did it. And we're both happy wherever we are. So that's that. Now, one of the things that also happened during this period was I was working on a startup idea. I was working on my first startup, or again, it may now have been my first, but like my first that actually came to life, because I think I did a lot of things. But the first that was actually coming to life, and it was called Shoppable. And it was supposed to be like a platform that would help vendors to sell across all social media platforms, or as many as possible, from one app. So from one app, you could upload a product and people would be able to see them on Facebook, your Instagram, and all of that. And they could click and buy from there, and you would be able to monitor everything from one place. Yeah. It was a pretty cool idea to an extent. And it was like seemingly, it was like at this point where, something good, there was always that feeling that, something good was about to happen with it. There were a number of investors who were seemingly interested, but they pulled out eventually. In fact, almost at the end, or in many cases, popular people and companies as well, which was rather disappointing, and is a conversation for another day. There was a company who even invited me to their office, and I talked about the idea, and yeah, they listened to everything, made me show them almost everything I was doing, and then told me they had a similar product. So more or less, they called me around to pick my brain. But yeah, I mean, the brain was not, the brain is not that special, so that's not a big deal anymore. Now with the startup, because a lot of these investors were like giving me hopes, but never really coming through, I decided I was going to get a job to like fund it by myself. So I got a job with a company in Lagos, and I was working for them from Benin at the time. And yeah, that gave me some money to move around, to hire people to do some things, some specific things. And yeah, that kind of helped that phase. I also got two of my friends to work on it for free. So there was like an equity split kind of thing. Um, at first, we were supposed to go at it as co-founders. Eventually, I said no, it was just going to be an equity thing. But yeah, a lot of things went around that. So I did that job for a while, and yeah, at some point the company was like, they want me to come to Lagos. Like things will move a lot faster if I was. So I was doing that job. I think I had done it for like 2 months. I had proven myself like that was good at what I was doing. And then they wanted me to come to Lagos. So the company was like, yeah, that things will progress a lot faster if I come around. They have investors that are waiting to see the product. They have a deadline to go to the same YC, interestingly, that I had applied to. And yeah, I was just helping out with as many things. So, but then the point was now it was time to move to Lagos, and I could no longer work from Benin. That was the next phase. Now, another factor that led to my making that decision, which I kind of don't like to talk too much about, was my health. There was like my health part, and there was also like a financial component to it. Now, the reason why I don't talk about this a lot is um I don't think there were enough reasons to have left school, right? I don't think there were the reasons for real why I left school, because even if I really believed in school with the kind of person I was, despite my health struggles and the financial aspect of things, I would have stayed in school and found my way through it, right? But I was also not interested in school for all the other reasons I had just mentioned. So there was no reason to even push and try harder. Now the next aspect I want to talk about is the post decision backlash. So, aftermath of making the decision. Now, a lot of things I am mentioning here are not for the sake of guilting anybody or pointing back to anything like you didn't believe in me, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, is to give you a sense of how things are very likely to turn out when you drop out of school, or if you decide to drop out of school, and somehow mentally prepare you for that. Now, the first thing that happens, or that happened to me in my case, is that, yeah, you lose your friends, or you lose everybody, more or less. In my case, it wasn't necessarily because all my friends stayed away because I dropped out of school. It was because I had just done this thing that to them was a taboo, right? They didn't like see the sense or the logic behind it, especially because I had gone more than halfway. Um, so to them, there was always a component of, I don't think you made a wise decision, but I'm here for you kind of thing. I had like two friends like that who were always trying to check on me. And then at some point, they actually gave up because they realized that I was staying away from them as well. And the reason was like, for the most part, I didn't want anybody to like corrupt the energy I was trying to go at this with. Like, I don't want you telling me I've made a wrong decision. I have made a decision. I want to go through it, and please don't suck off from that energy with the things you are feeling. So yeah, let me just go at this thing, and afterwards we can talk about it, right? Which was, I don't know. In retrospect, again, it was probably not the best idea, because it just like compounded with my loneliness and depression, and made like things exponentially worse because there was nobody to turn to. But yeah, that happened, and yeah, that was the thing. Now the second aspect of like the aftermath of my decision was my parents. My parents were very disappointed. I can clearly remember a couple of statements that were made about the devil ruining my life, about me ruining my life, about me being impatient, about me wasting their efforts and sacrifices, about a lot of things, about me setting a bad example for my younger brother. Um, yeah, it was a pretty messy situation, and my mom was crying a lot of times. And I didn't like that she was crying, but I also was thinking at it from the aspect of um, I can't make decisions about my life for you because for the most part you would not leave it. So I need to be careful. I need to walk that line of empathize and understand where you're coming from, but also take it into consideration of where I'm trying to go to, right? Um, Now, added to that, I was basically cut off. At some point, they stopped sending me money. I think they somehow probably expected that, or maybe they felt like, oh, you're not in school anymore, so you don't need money from us. Or maybe they also felt like, if we stop sending him money, and yeah, maybe at some point, if you starve him enough, he's going to realize that he made a mistake and he's going to go back to school. But guess what? I'm pretty dedicated, so I starved and I still did not go back. But yeah, there was that aspect. So I think essentially like the post decision phase was just full of a lot of disappointment from everybody, parents, friends, relatives who even called to say, what the fuck are you doing? Even members of the church, the elders and all of those who would call you and start talking about stuff like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? There was, lecturers, friends, like it was just everybody. There was basically nobody who saw it from where I was. At the time, interestingly, I had someone in my life, like a girlfriend. That was like a now that experience was an interesting one, but ultimately she also felt like I was being stupid, and she never forgot to make that clear. So again, the point of this is that a large number of people are not going to see it like you see it, and that's fine. And that is only if you are sure that this is exactly what you do, what you want to do. Like I was pretty sure that I was going to see this through, and I did not need anybody to do it. I was going to figure out my way, and yeah, it would turn out fine with enough hard work and dedication, more or less. Yeah. Now, the next aspect of this story is the most traumatic part of it, right? It is the most it is the most life-changing part of it. It was the most valuable part of it still. Now it was the part about all the suffering that came from it. So I had made a decision, parents cut me off, lost friends, nobody believed in me basically, and I decided to move to Lagos. Now I had a plan. And I had a plan. I had several backups. Like I'm the kind of person that would make a plan and make a backup for that plan and make a backup for the backup. So I had several backups. So I was like, oh, I'm going to stay with my uncle if that doesn't work out. I'm going to stay with my friend if that doesn't work out. I'm going to stay with this other friend. Like I had backups and I set them all in motion. I had those conversations. But then everything went south pretty quick, right? I spent my money, came to Lagos. Again, remember I was working for a company and the company wanted me to move. So that was part of my moving. Now I came to Lagos and the first place I went to was a friend's place because I was trying as much as possible to stay away from family. So I went to a friend and he was very kind and he let me stay in his place for a while. And yeah, that was pretty great. But then it wasn't his place, it was also his brother's place. So there was that problem of this can be a long-term solution. And then two things happened. First, they were moving from that place and his brother was coming back. So I could no longer stay there. Now I had to look for somewhere else. So I decided to turn to my relatives because, yeah, they say family, right? Blood is thicker than water. So that would be like, yeah, the ultimate solution for me. And then I called my uncle and told him everything about me wanting to come over and all of that. And he was like, yeah, I should come. Obviously, he wasn't aware that I dropped out of school and all of that. So, but then I got there and I settled in. And at night, he called my parents to let them know I was in his house and all of that. And yeah, let's just say he shouldn't have had that conversation. So my parents turned everything upside down pretty quickly. They told him lots of stuff about me and how I'm being stubborn and all of that, how I am wasting my life and all of that. I left school, this and that. And yeah, the next morning I woke up, he called me, started yelling, was getting pretty violent and shouting up and down and like just trying to shut me off. Um, and eventually he was like, I should leave. I should get out of the house and go back to school, pack my things. My parents said he should not let me stay there and he cannot go against my parents. So I should go back to school. So I listened. I acted like I was packing my stuff to go back to school, but I packed my stuff and decided to look for a plan B. So in his mind, to him, I had gone back to Uniben, but I didn't. So I was in Lagos. Now this was the hard part. I couldn't go back to a friend. The other friend didn't work out, and my relatives had all made shut up. Because again, I had other relatives in Lagos, but it was going to be the same thing. My parents had done their thing, and it's just a phone call, a matter of having a phone call and saying, "Oh no, we didn't send him to be there. Send him back to school." And then before you know, it becomes a whole family messy situation where everybody's sending me out. So I decided not to try that anymore, and I stayed on my own. I mean, there was some resentment towards my uncle, which there still is today, not because specifically because he kicked me out, but in the manner and a number of things he said. But yeah, I left the house, and yeah, so now I am basically homeless and trying to figure out a place to stay. Now, through my homelessness, I was still working for this company. They had no idea what was going on. I was doing whatever I had to do to get their job done. I had this very broken laptop that worked like his desktop. So when they took the light, it couldn't work anymore. It didn't have it. The keyboard was broken. The screen was half cracked. So I was using like an additional keyboard on top of it to work, right? So it was pretty bad. But I just found anywhere I could find light, I would just go work there. I started crashing all these hubs and co-working spaces and just using like connects or whatever, sometimes sneaking in just to work. So at some point I figured an idea came to me. There was this Instagram account I was following for a long while I was in school, and to a large extent, he was doing the things he was doing the things I wanted to do. Right? He had this company he was running. He was taking on projects. He was building out things. He was even trying to train other people and all of that. And he was like, and to be honest, the social media was pretty excellently branded. Right? It was pretty okay and convincing. So I felt like, oh, solution. I could reach out to this guy, offer my skills. I know I'm pretty good, and he would need somebody like me. So that would be good. I would automatically be part of a company, and probably they can help me out with accommodation. Now, I was now it's totally wrong. Like, no. First of all, the company was not a real company. It wasn't even set up. The company existed in this guy's head. I don't think it was even registered at the time. And it was just a one-man company, but this guy made it look like whatever he wanted. Like, and this taught me a thing about social media. Social media is fake, people. It is. Honestly, like, don't take the things you see there too seriously. It is a curated experience of a person, and they can curate it however they want, right? So this person, in reality, didn't have a company, didn't have an office, was also was also struggling quite a bit like me, crashing places, and most importantly, was staying in some place that was just like Ajibo. I mean, a lot of people would watching this may not know, but if you know Lagos, then you know Jibo on that bridge. And his place was just beside the railway line, and so every time the train goes by, the house would shake, even when like you would literally have to wake up or stop whatever you're doing. But you would feel it, is the point. Now, this was tragic for me because I had this mental model of what I was walking into, and then I got there and it was the exact opposite. This guy was even lying down on the ground. I think he had like a duvet. He was sleeping on the ground, so he had like a duvet, a very old, pretty dirty duvet that he was lying on, and the whole place was just messy. It was smoking, and like it was just very messy. But here's the cool part: he liked me, and I liked him too, to an extent. I felt like he was an ambitious guy like me. I felt like we're in similar places, and we could walk up from there together. I even at some point contemplated bringing him on Shoppable as a co-founder because I felt like he was similarly driven, and we could fuck shit up, right? Now he eventually so we met, right? I reached out on Instagram, we met, he invited me there, and I was totally surprised by what I saw. Like empty bottles of beer all over the place, smoking. He sleeps on the ground. It wasn't a cool place. It was just beside the railway line at Jibo on that bridge. It was just ridiculous. Like, I'm like, wow, am I going to be staying here? So eventually I had no place to go, so I communicated that, and it was like, no, he liked me, I liked him, like we could just stay here, right? Let's work together on stuff. So more or less, I started staying with this guy, but I was offering my services to stay there. So I would work on projects for him, with him, and all of that shit, and I could stay there. Now, this was also pretty interesting, and I like to provide that context because you might think, oh, I now have a home, but I didn't because this was not like a proper home. And I was also sleeping on the ground, like bare concrete ground. And every time the train went by, it would shake and shake me off, and I would wake up from sleep. Like, it was a terrible experience. The guy was also a smoker. He used to, and in fact, he was smoking almost every fucking second of it. He was just like always smoking, and he was smoking on my face. Like he would, it was a very small space, so he would just be smoking and be blowing shit in my face, and I couldn't do anything about that. But I was just managing my flow. So I had like this small space, right? This really small corner, right? And I'll just be there. If I'm not coding, then I'm like squeezed up, trying to sleep or something. Um, and yeah, through this period, I also did not have money. Now, I got the thing, so I got into a program called Google Summer of Codes while I was in school, a little bit, slightly before I left Benin for Lagos. So I got into a program called Google Summer of Codes, and it was basically an open source program where Google assigned us to various companies to work on stuff. And while working on those, and then they would pay you a stipend for working on those open source projects during that period. So I got into the program, and I had done the first month of work, but then things, because of the way things were, I was now suffering. Like the work was suffering, no light. I wasn't doing well. I was in school. Even while I was in school, I started suffering because there was no light. I was staying with a friend. He was staying in the custody. There were light problems. A lot of things started happening, and before you know, I lost it. I was dropped out of the program. They said I was no longer meeting up. So that was how that cycle ended. But again, I had some money from them. So I was like, I'll be fine in Lagos, right? As long as I have this money. I think at the time it was about $1,200, which was a lot of money for me then, right? So I had this money somewhere. I felt like, oh, I could rely on this. But now at this point, everything about my life was going south. I was trying to get that money to Nigeria, and then the money got stuck. My bank refused to release it. They gave me a ton of conditions to release it, and I couldn't meet them at the time because again I was homeless. And how do I move around to do all these things? I didn't even have money. Now I'm trying to access money so that I can do stuff, but then you're telling me to do things that require money to get my money. So I couldn't access my money. I tried to move funds from a ton of accounts I had, like foreign accounts, obviously, because I was doing like work for people, and so like most of my money was like in places like Pioneer and all that. So I was just trying to move it back to Nigeria, but none of that came through. The bank sat on my money. Besides, I've left that bank. I'm not going to call that name because I don't want to shit on them in this video, but I have left that bank, and I would never go back to that bank for any reason, even if I'm paid to. So yeah, they never released the money. So I had no money despite having a lot of money. Now, the next thing, so while I was with this guy and managing that small space and sleeping on the floor, I had no money, but I had to survive somehow. So at some point, my girlfriend came through. Again, this is not the girlfriend that did not believe in me. That girlfriend ended a long time ago. Um, I had someone else in my life at the time, and she was pretty amazing and supportive. I feel like till today, I don't even understand why she was supportive. Like, I feel like I would have left myself if I was the one, or like, even if I didn't leave, I wouldn't be as relaxed as she was. Maybe she believed in me, or maybe it was something else. I think she believed in me. I don't want to shit on that, or not value it for what it was. But yeah, she was supportive. And so at the time, I remember her clearly. I had no money. I had starved for a number of days. I think like 2-3 days. And she came to see me. I didn't want her to come to the place too, because I didn't want her to see where I was staying. I felt like it would break her spirit in some way. So I didn't let her see what was happening. And I decided we were going to meet somewhere. So I went to meet her on the road, and yeah, we talked. And when she was going, we hugged, and she slid some money into the back of my pocket. I think I can't remember clearly anymore, but yeah, I think it was 2,000 naira. It was 2,000 naira. That was now that was a lifesaver. I still I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. But here's what I did. So I was grateful, obviously. I still am anyway. Yeah, I'm grateful. Still am. Now I Took that money, went back home, and began to do some math. So there was this booker. There was this place to sell food along the road, close to like where we were. And so I began to do math of how long this money could keep me, like how many more days this money could buy me. So it was like, yeah, okay, this money could, if I had beans 15 naira and bread 15 naira every day, that gives me 20 days. So I was like, okay, fine. That means I have the next 20 days to figure out this shit, right? 20 days, go all in, find a way. You need to find something better than this or you're fucked. So I started doing that every evening. I was eating once a day. From then on, every evening by 5 p.m., I would go out and I would get stuff from the woman. It's the same meal all through. It was beans, 15 naira, and it was bread, 15 naira, and that kept me for the next 20 days. Halfway between that, in fact, not halfway, maybe after the first couple of days, like maybe 3 days, I started purging because obviously you should not be eating beans every day. And there was I didn't see any real solution to this because I couldn't start diversifying my meals in that small money. It wouldn't make sense. Plus, beans and bread is pretty filling versus the other alternatives. So I decided to instead buy flagyl and start taking it every day as a measure to combat the purging. So before I ate the food, I would take flagyl. And so I stopped purging, but I don't think that was a good solution. I am pretty sure that other things were going wrong with me because of that action, but at least I wasn't purging, so that worked. So I kept eating beans and bread till today. Just as a side note, I no longer eat beans. I don't know. You have to do a lot for me to eat beans. I hate it. Let's not say I hate it, but there's just traumatic stuff around food like beans, indomie, and those things. So don't bring it near me, please. If you like me, don't bring it near me. Anyway, that was that. So within the next 20 days, again, I had a fallout. Oh shit, this is another part. I had a fallout with the guy, and the fallout was basically that I liked showing myself. Again, this is something that I have gotten from a lot of people. People, especially when I stay with them or I do stuff in proximity with them. I will not say that I don't because I don't. I feel like if everybody's saying it, then there's something to it. But as I've looked at it as critically as I can, and I think for the most part, how you feel about someone is on you. It is how you feel about someone. And the reason I think that way is not because there's nothing I could improve on my end to make people feel less like that, because I have put effort into doing that over the years. But in retrospect, I feel like a lot of people that have felt that way have felt that way because they felt threatened. And this guy was a good example. When I would dig into ask, how am I showing myself? What do you mean by I'm showing myself? It's like you just wake up and sit down there and be on your computer. You don't even talk to anybody. You think you're very intelligent. I don't think anything, bro. And like it was just weird because I don't think anything. I'm not even thinking about you. I'm thinking about how I'm going to eat this food that is going to purge me, but it's going to buy me one extra day alive in this rubbish I am in, on the floor, concrete floor with body pains and back pain and all of that. And you think that the most important thing to me at that time is to wake up and start gisting with you so that you don't feel like I'm smarter than you. I'm not trying to be smarter than you. If you feel like I'm smarter than you, maybe it's because you don't feel like you're smart. But anyway, that happened. So there was a fallout. He felt like I was always acting smart, that I didn't think he knew what he was doing or that he was smart, or like I'm acting like I'm the only one that has vision or all those type of stuff. And he was like, yeah, that henceforth, that since I got to yourself, what have I done for him? That the things that he wants me to finish, I've not finished them, but I'm there trying to work on my own thing and trying to get out here and all this kind of stuff. Which was rather interesting because, I mean, we're in the same place. You let me stay here. Yes, I'm offering my services to be there, but I mean, if you were working to get out of there, you should be putting in the effort for yourself and not relying on my efforts, right? But that's cool. So I think there was a day we even talked about my startup idea, which is Shoppable, and we're trying to figure out like I was trying to get him on board, and he was like, yeah, he has had a similar idea in the past, and he talked about the idea, and I thought about it too, and I'm like, okay, I like what your idea is, but I pointed out the flaws in the idea, basically, because that's how my mind works. It's a business. We're trying to build something that works. Am I supposed to not tell you the flaws in your idea so that you feel smart? But then I did tell him the flaws in the idea, and I told him, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what you're doing. I think we can merge it in this way to make something more hybrid and something that checks all these boxes. And yeah, I think that was basically what led to the quarrel. And it was like, who do you think you are? I mean, that is not the first time. Every time I bring something, you be coming and you try to write it off, you be pointing out flaws and all of that. And the truth is, I don't disagree that I do that. Over the years, I've learned how to do that in a more calm and receptive way. But the truth is, I was doing that because there were flaws in what you were saying, and even for me, I do that in my head. I'm like the most violent person towards myself in my head. Like all the ways I would never treat other people, I treat myself that way. Like I criticize my ideas. Like, what are you even saying? You're saying nonsense. Can you have gain? Like I attack myself, and that's why most times when I finally say something, it's probably a very, very, very reformed and refined version of it because like I've been fighting myself. But yeah, that's just how it was, and it always comes across wrong or offensive to a lot of people. So the guy threatened to kick me out. He was like that I should leave the next day if I'm not going to do his work. And I just thought I shouldn't be doing my own stuff. It's his own stuff. He wants to see all of that every day, all day, kind of thing. And I was angry and I was like, I'm going to leave. But then I thought about it, right, that my anger wasn't going to do anything good for me. So there was no point doing that because I had no alternatives. So I pretty much begged him and I started doing his stuff and he let me stay for a couple of extra days. While I was doing that, I looked for other opportunities, reached out to a lot of people on Twitter, all the tech bros and gurus I knew, Timmy God, what's his name? Ichulo, Code Beast, all of them. I just was attacking everybody's DMs. And eventually, William Ichulo, I think I don't know how to pronounce the name, to be honest. But yeah, I think that's what everybody knows him as, was the most helpful person for no reason. He didn't know me, but he kind of asked Jordan about me because a friend of mine, Jordan, like, is also his friend or knew him somehow. So I think Jordan gave some good reviews and he was willing to help me out. So he helped me get a gig with some guy who turned out to be my friend till today. So he helped me get a gig with some guy who stayed in Ogun State, who was working on an idea and needed somebody. So basically, I joined the guy, offered my services, but I told him to pay me back by getting me a home and all that. So he told me he was going to, I think he tried, but eventually felt like the places he found were too expensive. He couldn't afford that. So he was like, I should come to their home in Ogun State and work on this idea. So I did that, came to their home in Ogun State. I was working on the idea. Originally, I was supposed to code, right? But eventually, I started doing a number of things because we really wanted to get stuff out. I don't think we got that idea out eventually. But again, at some point, the company put me in a hotel. They were paying for me to work from a hotel because they wanted me to work around the clock, more or less. So they made sure I had lights all through, and they felt like a hotel was the best solution to that. So, of course, with promises that they'll get me a place, because that was the original agreement. Come to Lagos, we'll get you a place. Let's just get this through. So yeah, while I was in the hotel, one of those days, the guy from Ogun State called me, said he's no longer, he's going to, his family, all of them are moving to Abuja for a bit, which meant that I could no longer come back there. Now, it also so happens that during this period, it was the same period that my company reached out to me and told me that they could no longer fund the hotels I was living in and that they could also not afford the place they promised me. So I could not go back to Ogun State, and I also did not have the place they promised me. I tried to push back and threaten that I was going to go back to Benin because I didn't have any other plans coming through. And I thought that would make them do it because they had raised investment and all of that, and it was a good part of that was due to my hard work because I worked hard to make sure there was the product so that they could pitch and all of that, but that didn't work out. That didn't make them budge at all. So they let me. They thought I had gone back to Benin basically, but I didn't. I started trying other options. I reached out to a friend, and a friend eventually reached out to his own friend to please accommodate me. So I think I ended up moving to that friend's house. Now, during this period, one of the hardest things that also happened, or the most painful things that happened, was coming to the office one day and being called into a meeting where I was put in the middle, and then like management sat around me, the CEO, CTO, CEO, all of them, and told me that there has been complaints from other people in the co-working space that every time I come in, I always come in smelly. Yeah, that happened. So it was a pretty life-changing experience. It was like this point where I was just, Philip, you this is the lowest low. You fucked up. Like, this is the lows of the lows. Like, you are now the guy that is smelling in the office. Yeah, but I don't know. It was terrible. And then there was this guy who didn't like me, whom I also didn't like. He was just a useless guy. And he was like championing the whole conversation and coming at me. Like, don't you have clothes? Don't you have this money? Try to get a place. Try to change your clothes. Get a perfume. If you don't have, talk to me. I'll buy for you and all of that. I'm like, wow, this is where I've ended up. Again, yeah, I couldn't afford that because then most of the salary they were paying me was even going into transportation from Ogun State to that place. So there was no way that could work out. So, but yeah, that was a really low point. And that was part of why I was willing to threaten them that I was going to move back to Benin if this was not working. Because I'm basically here going through all this. You're telling me I'm smelling and attacking me despite this sacrifice I'm making. And yeah, you're not even trying to fulfill your own end of the bargain. But that was that. So I moved to this friend of a friend's place, and I was staying there and working for the company. And then someday, a random day, I got a mail from the CEO letting me know that they can no longer continue with this arrangement because I'm no longer physically present, and they would like to terminate my blah blah my contract or like stuff like that, and that they expect me to return every company possession that was with me. I was fucking pissed because the saddest part about it is they didn't give me anything. Like, no company property was with me, and you had the guts to send me that mail. I was working for you with a laptop that was broken. I didn't have the keyboards, right? There was no keyboard on it. It was a desktop. You knew it, but you didn't do shit about it. I was still working with that, and even working beyond my role. I came in as a front-end person. I was designing. I was doing mobile apps. That was a stretch, quite a stretch. And like, you had the guts to tell me to return all company property. What company property? You should. But anyway, but that happened. So yeah, they let me go more or less. And yeah, I suddenly no longer had a job, which was kind of sad because I thought I was getting to a somewhat stable place. Again, this is clearly not stability because I'm staying with someone, but it was a more stable place than I have ever been in all this time. So I was like, yeah, maybe this is fucked because now at least I was working remotely, so all that transport money was back to me, and I could probably save up or plan my way out of this shit. But yeah, that ended, so I was no longer able to. There was no longer money coming in, and I was beginning to depend on this guy. Again, this guy, I'm not going to call his name, but then he became a friend-ish at some point. Maybe we still are, I don't know. But yeah, he became a friend in some sense. He let me stay in his place, and things were going well. But again, the problems began to come up. Two problems came up while I was there that led to me almost being kicked out twice. First of it was there was a competition that came up, and my brother applied for the competition. He pitched his idea, and he sent me a link that I should basically help him post it and all that so that people could vote for him, right? And then I did that. I just like sincerely and without any prior plans or gimmick did that. But here's what happened, right? So this guy and my own friend whom I reached out to earlier saw it and had a conversation about it, and we're like, look at this guy, he stole our idea and gave it to his brother to apply. Which was terrible. First of all, terrible because that was not their idea, so they didn't even bother to look at it properly to understand what it was. The guy just looked at it, glanced at it, and decided that I stole their idea to give my brother. Now, even more terrible because he felt like I needed to steal your idea to have something in my life. And in the first place, I didn't steal it for myself. I stole it to give my elder brother. That was like insulting on so many levels. Besides, I am like an idea lord. Anybody that knows me knows that at every point in time I have like 50 ideas, and my problem is executing one to the to the end, right? Like, so it was a painful experience. And then, but then you had this conversation. You were like, if not so, this guy be, if this is the kind of person he is, I'm going to he should leave my house. You should kick him out. I don't like snake, blah, blah, blah. He's going to leave the house and all that. And then he came back and attacked me and basically was like that. If this is how I am, I'm going to leave the house and all that. And yeah, eventually we resolved it because I made it clear that it was not his idea and he realized. I don't know if he apologized. I don't think he did. Oh, I think he did, but I didn't care because he had taken it too far already and the apology didn't mean much. But I was just calm because, I mean, I'm staying in your house and I don't have a choice. You're basically helping me despite the fact that you just insulted me and every little friendship that we had before. But yeah, so I just stayed grateful for that part and decided to ignore the rest. But that was one. Then the second problem we had another day was I was, again, a similar problem like I had with the other guy. He said something. I'm the kind of person that when you say something, I would always like very likely bring out my phone to confirm stuff, especially if it's you are referencing stats that are generally verifiable. Like if you tell me that the distance between the sun and the moon is 500 kilometers, I'm not going to take your word at face value because you may be wrong and you're human. I'd prefer to check and be sure so that even when I have conversations outside and I need to utilize that information, I am sure that I am not saying nonsense. But yeah, he felt offended by that. Like, why would he say that whenever I'm talking, you would always be confirming it on your phone in front of me? And I can understand how offensive that might be, but again, that was me just being me because I'm offensive to myself. Like when I'm saying stuff, I can tell you, like I can basically be talking to you and be like, oh wait, let me confirm that before I say nonsense. And I pull up my phone and I check it so that I know I'm not telling you the wrong thing. But yeah, he took it very seriously. He was like that. What do I think? I think I'm smarter than him. That he's not intelligent and all that. That when he's talking, I should listen to him. And all that. And I'm like, I'm not that kind of person. I'm not going to listen to you. I think we had that fight back and forth, and it was like, yeah. Basically, when he's talking, I should listen, and he didn't like that I was doing that. So that was another fight. Now, the final fight that was like a serious problem was him and his brother were pretty lazy. I had to do a lot of work. Again, at first, to be fair, now the dynamics here is rather interesting because his brother, he's older than I am, but the brother is his younger brother. Let's be clear on that. But his brother is older than I am, and I am not friends with his brother. Obviously, he is my friend. So maybe I'm wrong, but by virtue of that, I expect that you are interacting with me as your friend, not as your junior. So you shouldn't be bringing in like equations of you are like my younger brother, like you are just as young as my younger brother, or shouldn't we also be playing on the fact that I'm staying with you because supposedly we are friends, but no, I think I got it wrong because the relationship was rather transactional to him, and it was like, you're staying here for free. You should be doing the most work and all that. They shared the stuff, and he expected me basically to be doing lots of the fetching water, washing plates, and all that, which I was doing already, but not most stuff. I made sure to the large extent I was doing more than him, but not as much as his younger brother, because prior to my coming, that was his younger brother's responsibility. So it's not like I was taking everything from his younger brother. I was just around to support. When I had money, put it in. When I could, when there was no water, I joined the younger brother once in a while. But then the younger brother took advantage of it also and wasn't doing stuff. He was always going out to play football, leave the plates in the sink and all of that. And at first I was, yeah, I started joining. And then there was a battle of, he would go to work and expect that when he comes back, there should be food, which didn't make much sense to me because I would go out and not expect food. I mean, you're helping me out, like you didn't hire a chef. But again, I think everybody understands. I understand where he's coming from. I think there was a part where when you're helping people out, you probably think they should be grateful and support you in however they can. But I think for me, I think that when you help people, you just help people and move on. They may not be able to help you back, and that's okay. Like you're helping for helping sake, because you cannot. But anyway, that's that. So that didn't turn out well. At some point, they left the plate for a couple of days, and I was like, I'm not going to watch this thing. We agreed because at some point we agreed, yeah, for the dishes when you use whatever plate, you should wash it off and all that. But they never did, right? So these guys will leave it, and I was washing it until one day I'm like, I'm not washing this because that day was particularly messy. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to leave this. And I left it, and they left it too for like the next 2 3 days, and it became a problem. So the guy was like, I have to wash the plate or I'm leaving the house. And I chose to leave the house. But at some point, halfway through packing my things and all that, I realized that that was a stupid decision because I couldn't be doing that. At that time, also, I was more like I was willing to leave the house because I had gotten a gig. So I joined some company called Scotch, which was a platform where I was writing technical articles and they were paying me. So in January, like in the first month of joining them, I made sure I wrote one article every day for that company. And for each article, I think they paid me about $150. So by the end of January, I had made like over $1 million on a low. Obviously, I didn't announce it, and I still was staying with the guy because I wanted to have a more concrete plan instead of just jump out and start blowing away my just newly founded $1 million or something like that. Still, I became more involved in financial activities and started contributing to some things and buying food stuff once in a while. So that was my way of being fair. But I didn't feel like I had to announce it because announcing your newly founded safety stash is not necessarily the way to go there. So that happened, and it was like you have to wash the plates or leave the house. But eventually, after like some thoughts, I'm like, no, Philip, don't let your pride destroy you. You kind of need this, so it's probably unnecessary to go through this. So I stopped packing. I left my things and I went to wash the place. I still remember blasting Eminem like a madman, cause all that anger and emotion he puts into this song kind of helped me through that phase of my life. So I was blasting Eminem and just washing, and I finished the plates and somehow managed to stay. But a couple of months after that, I had enough money to get my own place. I got my own place and I moved out. While moving out, I like just got stuff, filled the house up, and I left. I got my place in Yaba. So that was how the suffering phase ended. Once I got my place from then on, it was pretty solid. I had a writing job. I was writing articles. I also had a company that hired me as a senior front-end engineer and was paying me, I think, about $450K a month. So that was so beautiful. And it was like, things had turned out for the best. I also had my girlfriend, I wouldn't forget to mention, who helped me through that phase as well. And I still had her by the end of it also. That was pretty good. There's a number of other things that happened in between along the way, but I'm going to end it at that. And if there's anything specifically you want to know, feel free to reach out or drop comments in the section or comments down below, and I would answer your questions. But ultimately, let's talk about the lessons and my advice for anyone who's contemplating the decision. Now, the first lesson, to be honest, I have for anybody is that, or the first lesson I feel like this taught me is how much of your energy or conviction towards things should come from within. It is super important to be so confident and sure of what you're doing, and that's the only way you'll be able to weather the storm whenever it comes. If I was going at this because my parents asked me to, or because somebody told me it's the best way of life or something like that, then chances are that when the difficult times came, I would have given up and went back to the thing that was already seemingly working, or at least way less difficult, pretty much. But I didn't do that because I was sure what I wanted to do. The second lesson is, I think you should understand that when you make decisions like this, not specifically tied to dropping out of school, but when you make this kind of strong decisions, pretty unusual decisions, you should understand that there would always be a backlash from the people that are dearest to you. I still remember a very close friend of mine then walking up to me. So there was this exam and I rushed into the exam hall. I was just, let me just write my shit and go. And I was trying to quickly read up a couple of things that I had not yet covered. So I'm like, please let me have, did they talk about this? And I walked up to her to like get a sense of, what did they teach, so that I know which of them I have covered and all of things like that. And she looked at me very derogatively, if that's a word. there was a way she looked at me and she was like, look how you've fallen, or something like that. She said, so she basically said, normally, she was obviously demonstrating with her hands. She was like, normally, the friends I keep are at this level. And she put her hand at some level. And she said, and you are at this level. And she puts me at a higher level. But she said, no, but these days, you are now at this level. And then she put her hand like way lower than the other two levels. Essentially telling me that before, you used to be this guy I adored who used to teach us stuff, when we used to read with us and all of that, and you were way higher than my friend level. Like, you were just guy I looked up to, or I liked being around, or something like that. But look at how you're falling now. Now you're not even worth being my friend. And I was so infuriating, but yeah, I held it in and I did nothing about it. I don't hold any grudges. Till today, we talk once in a while, only over DMs, once in a while. But that happened. And the point is, like, the dearest people to you would not understand the decision, and they may react in the weirdest way possible, like in the most offensive ways. And sometimes it may be intentional, other times it may not be. Sometimes they're just like, they think that's what the best thing to do, or they don't even know how to react, so they're just doing stuff. I don't think anyone should take it so seriously, as long as you're sure of what you want to do. So what's my advice, basically? First of all, the most important advice for anyone contemplating this decision is that I think you need to have a clear sense of why you are contemplating this decision. Because a lot of times, the people that reach out to me because they know I have a similar story and are trying to get a sense of what was my motivation and how did it go. A lot of times, those people are running away from school because school is difficult. And I wasn't running away from school because school was difficult. Like, academic stuff was probably the thing I was best at. So I wasn't running for that reason. So a lot of times when people are telling me you want to drop out, if you are running because you don't think you can handle the academic stuff, I kind of have a problem with that, because to be fair, nothing about life is easier than the academic stuff. Every other thing that has its own level of, its own form of difficulty, which would be just as challenging. And if you don't have that determination and all of that to get through the academic stuff, you probably cannot get through life. So I think it is, I used to always say, like, when you look at first class students, I don't think they are admirable for me because they are first class students, because I think anyone can be a first class student. It's not difficult. But the resilience and the determination it takes to keep up or do whatever it takes to be there year upon year is something that goes a long way in life. So that's the respect I think I have for that. And I think it's so important. So the first question is, figure out your why. Is your why because you are running away from a challenge? Or is your why because, although this thing is something I am doing or can do, I'd rather not? Now, if that is the case, I think next question is, what would you rather be doing? If you haven't figured out what you would rather be doing, then you probably should not be jumping around and throwing away the things you're already doing, because I think a level of clarity is required when you are about to make such a decision. You need to be sure or have some sense of direction of what you're doing. And that's not because things are going to go exactly as planned. It's just because having a plan shows a sense of clarity and gives you like this North Star with which you could consistently make progress or work towards and progressively calibrate as things change. But if you have no plan B, you just want to drop out and then figure it out, bro, that you're probably going to end up on the streets selling granules or something of that nature. You need to have some sense of clarity on why is this not working for you, and what would rather work for you. What would you, so if you were dropping out today, what would you be doing? And then at that point, you should even be asking yourself the question, have I done enough? Can't I do that even right now? Can't I do that even in the smallest way possible, so that if at all I'm going to make this jump, I am seemingly somewhat prepared? Because if I had made the jump to drop out of school when I had no technical skill, then nobody would have been able to help me. But I was pretty good already. I was at least a very solid programmer, web developer. So I had a number of prospects. It was a matter of just give me an opportunity and I will show you what I can do. But if you could not do anything and you make such a decision, then chances are bro, you're probably going to starve and die. Yeah, but I mean, you get my point, boy. So you need to be clear on that. Um, Another piece of advice I think I have, or this is just a general statement, or I have gotten from all this in retrospect, is I think it is more important to be 100% sure of the wrong thing than to be half sure of the right thing. And again, this is arguable, but everybody has their own philosophies of life. For me, I think I place a premium on intentionality and mindfulness and self awareness, which means like I want to do things because I want to do them and not because someone in some way is influencing me to do them. And I critique myself all the time on this basis. I'm trying to figure out, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because people would like it, or this would get views, or people would applaud the effort, or what? Or am I doing this because I want to do it and I think it is good for me? I think that is so important. So as much as dropping out of school in some way may have been a wrong decision, it was the right decision for me because it was the thing I was 100% sure I wanted to do. It was the thing I was 100% clear on my next course of actions for, versus school, where I was almost definitely sure that coming out as a graduate, I would just be in this pool of people who had outdated knowledge and had to do a whole lot of stuff to level up before they were even valuable to the global market. Because obviously at the time my eyes were not on like Nigeria. The question was, can I come out of Uniben and get a job and compete for a job like an MIT graduate would? And I couldn't have. Um, yeah, now the final piece of advice I think I have for anyone contemplating such a decision is, do not forget that the school is not the end of knowledge, because dropping out of school did not mean I stopped learning. For the most part, the things I learned out of school were way more than the things I learned in school. My friends used to mock me then that I had probably watched all the JavaScript tutorials in this life. I was constantly learning, even when I was a relative pro, like to an extent. I was not a pro, I was good, right? But even at that point, I was still watching courses, I was reading books, I was learning. And this is where the first point I made comes in. If you run away from school because you don't like to learn, I'm sorry, but you would not survive outside of school, because it is just another aspect of life where you still have to learn a different set of things, but you ultimately have to keep learning things. So it is super, super important to not stop learning because you've dropped out of school, because school is not tied to knowledge, it is not tied to development, it is not tied to personal growth. School is just school. It is an academic institution that tries to make sure that you acquire all of those in a more structured environment. A lot of times it fails to do so for a lot of people, but it has worked out for a lot of people. So you have to figure out which type you are, and if you're not the type that you will work out for, make sure that you do not forget the basics. Like, make sure you do not forget the basics. Do not forget that it is still super important to remain a lifelong learner and be dedicated to whatever you're doing, and make sure you make the most out of this decision you have made, whether it is to stay in school or it is to drop out. That's pretty much it. I'm glad you made it to the end of this episode. If you did, I realized it's a pretty long episode. Even my camera gave up halfway, so that's understandable. But yeah, I'm glad you listened. And it's a privilege that I've been able to share this story or experience with anyone who takes the time to listen to this. Again, feel free to reach out in the comment section. And if you have a similar story, or you need some advice, or you have some questions as regards this, feel free to ask in the comments. I would be down there waiting for all of you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.